in fall of last year, I was biking to class on campus at Iowa State University, and while I was biking to class, I was on a shared pathway, which is a pathway that's usually designated, well, the way that it's designed is that it's meant for both pedestrians and bikers. So while I was on the pedestrian pathway, I unfortunately was hit by a car and suffered some pretty bad facial injuries, including 12 stitches to my forehead, a number of facial abrasions. My nose was fractured. So it was really traumatic for me, and I have been biking for my entire adult life, and I had never experienced anything like that before. So while I was in the midst of, kind of figuring out what I'm supposed to do, someone from the Iowa Bike Coalition, in fact, the executive director there, had advised me to reach out to Jeff and see, whether it would be worthwhile having an exploratory conversation, which I ultimately did, and I'm very glad that I did, because he was very helpful in sort of the next steps that I took after that bike collision. I found Jeff and his team incredibly professional. They were very organized, which is really helpful, especially for someone like me. I ultimately decided to go through and file a lawsuit, which I had never done in my life, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone to have to ever do that. It was just the circumstances that sort of required me to see this through and see the benefit of and kind of the specifically within the spirit of trying to make Iowa more bike friendly, that those of us who do get hit by cars as bikers need to do something about it. So it was really helpful because I felt as though Jeff really heard me, not just because he's like a lawyer that's looking to work with people who've gotten severe injuries, but most importantly because he, of course, like treated me as a human being, as a professional, and is a biker himself. So that was really helpful because he understood truly where I was coming from and recognized the challenges that those of us who bike, whether recreationally or professionally, go through in a state that should otherwise be more friendly towards sharing the road. And I mean, from his staff to himself, I always felt like I could reach out, to get clarification. And I also, as a client, did feel as though they were doing their due diligence with follow-through, which is incredibly helpful when handling a situation like this. If someone that I know went through something similar, I would certainly recommend that they work with Jeff. What I really appreciated about Jeff from my initial phone call with him was that he wasn't presumptuous or making any kind of assumptions around what had happened. He was more just trying to listen and invited me to the office to have, like I said, no strings attached, just a baseline conversation. And I think that's really important, especially for those of us who don't necessarily want to do the whole, going through the whole process of litigation, because it can be, draining and certainly difficult because you have to relive your trauma in every kind of step of the way. I think what was really helpful, again, is like that whole being heard and not being felt like, oh, you're just another client, but more importantly, like you are now part of this team, and like more importantly, like kind of part of this family. So we're here to hear you out, and if it's something that makes sense specifically for you in alignment, then we'll be happy to work together. So I think that's really important for someone who particularly feels like there was an injustice that happened to them, that they can talk to a lawyer that's really gonna listen attentively and see if they can really meet their needs.